Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Reselling Rhythms. I'm Adams with Adams Exploits. Today, we are very fortunate to have two great ladies as our guests, Katy and Vikki, from the great city of Las Vegas, Nevada. So what I'm going to do, guys, is while the notices go out for the live stream, I'm going to give it a minute or two for let the chat fill in. Say hello to a few people that have joined us, and we'll get started very shortly. So let's see who's in the chat so far. We have Craig Lanchard Picker. We have Andy's Closet. We have Miss Susan Stricker. Who else is in the chat? Jameson's Closet. Lisa, thanks for joining us. Miss Kimmy, thank you. Mr. Pittsburgh Picks, PGH Picks, good to see you. Hope things are fine up in Pittsburgh. I know the weather's been kind of dicey lately, but hopefully you got some nice fall weather up there. Of course, we have Crystal. And we have Miss Thompson Jennings. Thank you for joining us. So, like I said, we're going to give it about another minute, guys. Basically, what we're going to do is my typical reselling rhythms. And again, if you're new to my channel, what I do is I try to interview other resellers that are more experienced than I am with various skill sets. Last week, I had someone that did FBA and Amazon. Matthew, FBA Ops. I've had Casey the Rockstar Flipper on my channel several times. Again, so there's a lot of interviews with other resellers, guys. So if you're interested, if you find this useful information, please, like, subscribe, and follow the other videos. Watch those as well. I go back a lot of times and I forget, some of the tips and tricks. And I'll go back and watch some of my old videos and it's like, oh, that's right. So-and-so said to do this. And that's a great tip. When I'm outsourcing, I'm going to have to try that again and, try taking advantage of that. So we'll get started in about 30 seconds, guy. Michelle Lofton is here, my trivia expert. Thanks for joining us. And my moderator, Michelle. DuPage Picker, or DuPage, as Katy and Vikki like to call them. DuPage Pickers here. So we're going to get started, guys. So let me introduce our guest, and we will go from there. We have Miss Katy and Miss Vikki. Welcome, ladies.
How's it going?
Itself. It's great. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate it. So who would like to go first and introduce you guys and tell us about yourselves and how what your background is, how you got involved in reselling, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Katy. This is Vikki. I've been selling for about 4 years now. I had my first sale on eBay in December of 2015. But I sold stuff on and off before that. Like when I went to grad school back in 2007, I actually funded my move by selling off half of my movie collection, like DVD, Blu-ray collection, on Amazon, and raised a few $1,000s there to fund my move to New York City. So I'm familiar with the whole idea of reselling and stuff. But I'm from Oregon originally. And before I was doing reselling as a job, I was actually in the nonprofit field. The thing I was doing just before this was I was executive director for a Habitat for Humanity affiliate in Oregon. And before that, I was working actually in prisons and a lot of education programs in prison, different prisons in Oregon and in New York and stuff like that. So I have kind of there's a million other things I used to do. I'm sure a lot of you guys that do reselling now have like a crazy past. And we know people who were lawyers before, who it's crazy, like who ends up doing this for a living. But it was totally random for me. It was just a matter of like I'd left my job to start my own business as a small business marketing consultant, and I happened to see some shoes at the Adidas outlet. I thought, oh, these are super cheap. I bet I could sell them. And they sold super fast. And next thing I knew, a couple months later, I was a full-time reseller. It was really weird. So it's just kind of what I do now.
It just happened.
It really did just kind of happen. And then, because I have the background in nonprofit work, just doing something like reselling to make money to get by isn't really enough for me. Like I needed to have something bigger, something outside of myself that I was doing as well, which is how I ended up doing the whole YouTube thing, because I really like teaching other people and helping other people to improve themselves. So kind of gets me that little fix like that. Right. How about that? Is that a good intro? I don't know.
It's fine.
Well,
I bring that up on my channel quite a bit. My whole family were school teachers. So that's kind of why I enjoy doing YouTube, because I enjoy helping people. I enjoy learning myself, and I enjoy helping others to be successful. So that's why I do YouTube. And plus, reselling, we all know that reselling can be kind of lonely. I'm single. I live by myself. So this kind of helps me connect with the community and helps me,
for sure.
friendship, so to speak. So
yeah, we're actually really lucky that we, even though we actually have completely separate stores, in case you guys don't know, we are a couple. We do the YouTube channel together, so people see us as kind of a team. We actually have completely separate stores, and I see Borderline Hoarderish is in the chat putting our links to our stores. We each have an eBay store, we each have an Etsy store, completely separate businesses. But it's nice because we get to have that camaraderie, so to speak, where our partner gets where we're coming from, and
right, and that's it. A lot of times with other resellers, just like this isn't really a job. Well, why are you or your family? Why are you doing this?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I have a lot of support because she knows exactly what I'm doing, and
exactly what you right.
She understands it.
Your trials and tribulations, and you know when you find the golden, what is it? Not the golden grail. What's it called? The
Holy Grail.
Holy Grail. Thank you. It's like, oh, you're like, it's
Yeah,
exactly. In the thrift store, I can make a fortune.
All right. So I guess a little
You're
bit
up.
about me.
Yes.
I've been selling on the I've been on the platform since '98, and I was
old.
a buyer. I am old. I am OG eBay. So I've been on the platform since '98. I've been selling since about 2002, and I've been full-time selling since 2010. Around 2002, I was doing very heavy part-time selling, $30,000, $40,000 a year, and then went to full-time in 2010. My background before eBay was in the mortgage banking industry. I was a mortgage broker for about 15 years. That was my most of my professional adult life. I'm 44. I've been doing this full time for 10 years. So you do the math.
Whoa. You're 44?
Vikki didn't know that. She thought you were 40.
So I've been in the mortgage banking field for a long time. And then when the market crashed around 2008 and 2009, I stayed in it for a little while, but that was when I really started to focus on my mortgage, on my online business, and I decided to make that a full-time living. It took me a couple of years to get it up to the same speed and income as where I was before in the banking industry, but once I got there, I haven't ever looked back. And much like Katy, one of the things that drew us together is I've also been working in the nonprofit industry for 16 years now. I say working, but it's volunteer for me. So I work with the burn community, people that have been burned by fires or accidents and have burn injuries. I work with burn survivors. So I've been working with various nonprofits, a couple that I founded back in New England, where I'm from. I'm from Rhode Island, even though I live in Las Vegas. And I've been doing that for 16 years. And I found that working for myself gave me the flexibility to do a lot of the volunteer work and focus and giving back in the community that I was not able to do when I had a 9-to-5 job. So I'm as irritated as we may be with eBay sometimes, it is still my favorite thing. So.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like we generally do work like 7 days a week, even if it's just going out and sourcing, but we work a lot. But the reality is we also, once you add up visiting my family, visiting her family, going to this conference, going to that conference, volunteering in a camp, it's like it adds up to like a good 6 weeks, like six full weeks off.
You almost 6 weeks off. Right?
Yeah. And
you're working 7 days a week and
yeah, you're not going to get that much time off in most jobs.
True.
Unless
paid
you're
time.
really,
Paid time
unless
off.
you're really, really lucky. You're not going to get that kind of flexibility. So,
hi, Beth, Reseller Robo. How are you?
You know Miss Beth?
Yes, I love Miss Beth.
Formerly Miss Ten of Hearts?
Yep, formerly.
Sweetheart, I met her the first time at eBay opened 2 years ago.
Me too.
Yeah, we were walking down the hallway through the casino, and I just said, "Oh, hi, I'm Adam," and we introduced her, and we hung out together. I talked about earlier about Jason and Karin. Beth knows Jason and Karin, and then we ended up going to Hell's Kitchen.
Oh, nice.
We were at Casey's meetup, and Beth was there, and Jason and Karin came, joined me there, and then we were talking and whatnot, and they said, I told them I'd like to take you guys out to Hell's Kitchen, and they had a car, which was nice. And then they said, well, we'd like to bring Beth along. I said, that's fine with me. And she's welcome. So then Beth did like a little traveling vlog as we were driving there and through the casino. And it was a lot of fun. So that's when I first met Beth.
Yeah, I see Vandy's Closet says, I'd rather do something I love 7 days a week than something I hate for 5. And that's the truth.
Well, yeah, it's not a JOB, right?
I hate not being able to work. It's like that old joke or saying where it's like, you're never, when you're on your deathbed, you're never going to say you wish you spent more time at the office. And I kind of feel like I might say that on my deathbed. I don't know, because I really love what I do. I have a lot of fun. I get to hang out with her all day, every day. Like, so I don't see the problem.
And
Right.
eBay brought us together. So those of you that don't know us.
Yeah, let's get into that a little bit. You guys actually met at eBay Open, correct?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys know this, but eBay Open is actually a dating service. And so if you are looking for the love of your life.
Well, I haven't had any success. I've been there twice, but
quit complaining about the cost of the ticket, because it's not a lot to pay to find somebody that's going to.
If I found somebody special, it'd be worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, we met at eBay Open in 2017.
Yeah. And then I moved from Oregon to Vegas right in the middle of fourth quarter. We were trying to be responsible. I said, oh yeah, I'm going to wait till after fourth quarter's over and move during the slower time. And basically I ended up moving here to Vegas in the middle of December. So couldn't wait.
Never shut
down. Without giving out, and I don't want details, but what kind of area are you guys are actually in the city proper of Vegas? Or are you in
we're Henderson? Yeah, we're
Henderson. Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay.
We're about 10 minutes from the Strip.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, but in the nice suburbs.
Yep, in the suburbs.
Right. Well, eventually I'd like to have you guys on later when we get closer to eBay Open, and you can talk about Las Vegas, and talk about, for people that are coming there, things that we can do, and maybe some tips and tricks. I know I was on Beth's channel, Reseller Robo, talking about how I kind of do it on the cheap, so to speak. Back in the day when I was selling wine and liquor wholesale, I used to go twice a year, because we used to have off in January and also in August, a mandatory shutdown for inventory for the state. And when I was in a relationship, I would go twice a year. So then I would spend, normal amounts of money. I wasn't anything crazy.
Yeah.
But now that I'm on a fixed income, it's kind of like, well, the airfare ticket's $500, and the room is with the resort fees and this craziness is $100 some dollars a night, and I spent over $2,000, and then that's basically I broke even on gambling.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's good.
Thank God.
You made up for it. Yeah, you made $4,000.
I mean, we're definitely lucky that we live here, because it makes it a lot easier. We just stay home, and we have to drive in every morning, but we stay home close, so we can get our shipping done. We don't have somebody come watch the dogs. We don't have to extend our handling time. We do our shipping in the morning, and we're at wherever Open is, whatever hotel it's at. We're there by 8 in the morning, and we scraggle home at midnight or so. And,
you ladies actually buy tickets. So
we buy tickets. We just don't stay at the hotel.
Yeah. Correct. Right. And obviously you guys are there on Monday at the Skyfall Lounge. You do.
Yeah, we've done that the past couple of years. We had our group come. It was we talked about it with Casey this year, and it was so crowded this year, but that really is the best location for a meetup at Mandalay Bay. So,
last year it's like, we were talking to Casey, and he was thinking about doing, because they have there's another group that kind of facilitated starting the meet, have people meet there. They do call it the unofficial meet and greet. And so when Casey was trying to decide where to have his, meetup at the beginning, we were kind of like, why don't we just all have it at the same place? Like, we don't want to make people choose.
Right.
We shouldn't have, nobody should have to choose between who they want to hang out with, because it's not a popularity contest. We're all in this together. It's way more fun to support each other. And as you can see with my Rally Roots hat, I'd rather support my fellow resellers and compete with them.
It's funny. Ryan and Allie did I wouldn't really call it a pop-up, but I purchased my first gimbal, and I was trying to figure out how to use a gimbal, and it was a 2018 eBay Open. And I was at one of those little pop-up tables in the exhibition center, and I was doing a little live stream from there. And that was before you had to have 1,000 subscribers. So they were being interviewed by eBay Radio or whatever. Mm-hmm. They kind of walked by, and I kind of spun my iPhone around, and I said, "Oh, here's Ryan and Allie." And they said, "Hey guys, Allie's all smiles and waving and everything." And I told them, "Oh, this is the
so nice.
Mobile." They're good kids.
They're very nice people. Nice. Again, they weren't there this year. I think they were on vacation somewhere.
Yeah, Ryan's one of Ryan's best friends got married that week. So
right.
They couldn't attend.
Yeah.
Right. Now, really nice I'm sorry. Did you? Again, I tell people I got kind of into reselling because out of necessity, because I couldn't work a regular job, and my mother was kind of like she wasn't a thrifter, but she would like shop at the outlets, and like I know you, Katie, you say things like my mother would say like Marshall's and Target and that type of thing, and she would teach me how to shop for bargains. And again, now that I'm on fixed income, I mean, I was showing people the other day. I mean, I was on with Steve Rakin, and I had an Eyeside polo shirt on. Well, the sticker price was $60 some. I paid $12.
Right.
Granted, to me, it's not a $60 polo shirt. It's probably like a $25 polo shirt, but I paid $12. Now, you said you sold your DVDs when you were trying to generate income.
Yeah.
Vikki, did you have anything that you did when you were younger? Did you have like any family members that were like into flea
No,
market,
it's funny.
that?
I talk about this. I'm from, I'm from Rhode Island, so there are antiques everywhere, right? I mean,
Right.
half the people there are antiques. It's the largest, it's the highest age bracket other than Florida in the entire country is in Rhode Island, Florida. So, and most people that retire from Rhode Island move to Florida. So,
Right.
however that works. But no, my mother actually, I never went to a garage sale. I never went to a garage sale, yard sale, thrift store, secondhand store, anything like that. My mother used to think everything used was gross. So
Okay.
it made me think that because I didn't know any better. I was just raised that, I wouldn't say that we were snobs, but my mom was, she was a bargain shopper, but it had to be
snobby.
It had to be new. It couldn't be used. You didn't
Okay.
wear, used clothing or anything like that. So when I first fell into reselling was when I was married previously, and when my ex and I moved in together, I owned a home and he owned a home, and we combined our stuff, and we had a lot of duplicates of stuff. So it was early on in 2003 and 2002, and I realized that selling DVDs and CDs, that was when they used to sell a lot more prevalently.
Mm-hmm.
And records and things like that. We got rid of all of our duplicates online very quickly with half.com and eBay, and it was just a lot easier. And then I went to a garage sale, like my very first garage sale, and I purchased an antique cash register, an antique national cash register. This thing was brass and, quarter sawn wood, and it weighed probably 60 pounds, and I got it for $2. They wanted to get rid of it. So I put it on eBay. I said, this is gotta be worth something. I did my limited research that I was able to do at the time, because back then it was a lot harder to do research on items. And I threw it up in an auction because, again, everything used to sell an auction then. And it sold for like $1,500. And I was hooked.
Wow. For $2, you turned $2 into $1,500.
And that was it. That was
been chasing
Okay,
that high
well,
ever since.
I don't typically ask that, but that's like the question. What's your biggest flip that a lot of these reselling interview shows do? Was that your biggest flip?
It's not my biggest. I have done more, but that was one of the biggest for sure. And that was clearly the one that got me hooked. And I
guess so.
I had no idea how to ship it. It weighed 60 pounds. I had no idea how to ship anything. I had to take it to a UPS store and have them ship it. And I probably paid, I think I had to email the customer with how much it would cost. I can't even remember back then. You didn't do calculated, and it was a mess.
Yeah.
And it probably cost me $300 to ship it, but I didn't care because I had made so much money on it. It was great.
See, and I had a very different experience for Vikki growing up. I come from a thrifting family. We love it. I've always loved going to thrift stores. My grandma is like the OG original gangsta of flipping.
Yeah, I was in your blood. So so
it's in my blood. So like when I was a kid, it's like my grandma used to take us to like garage sales and stuff. And when we would go visit my grandparents up in Portland, Oregon, we would go to the Valley Village there, which is the same as Savers. We would go to a place called the Red, White, and Blue, and we would go to garage sales. And she was an expert at vintage linens and scarves and stuff like that. And she would buy them super cheap. And then she would usually like rent a table or a booth at they have those different, sometimes they're like temporary events or other places.
Like a church would have it or something, or right.
Yeah, it was like she'd do like a
co-op. Or a local community would have it, whatever. Right.
Yeah, and she would sell her stuff. So it's kind of cool because she's still around. She's in her mid-90s.
Oh, nice.
But
she's adorable.
But it's cool because she totally gets what I do for a living. Other people have like family members who don't understand, or you have your grandparents. They're like, well, that's nice, but they don't really get what's happening.
You get a real job.
She totally gets it. She loves that I do this. She loves to hear about stuff I find and stuff I sell.
One of those treasures.
Yep, exactly.
She thinks it's fascinating, and because I sell a lot of vintage and antique and both clothing and other items, I started off selling all antiques. When we visit her grandmother, she's always asking me questions because my stuff interests her a little bit more than Katie's, although she loves the whole flip. The stuff that I sell, she likes. Yeah, she's always like, so what about?
She loves hearing I bought something for $1 and sold it for $100. Like that, she loves it. She thinks it's fun. And my sister was like going to the bins way before I ever even knew what they were. Because my sister probably has consistently gone to thrift stores from when we were kids all the way up. And she would always, years ago, she would tell me about going to the pound store. That's what she called it, the pound store.
The
And I
pound
was
store
just
rate,
like,
the by weight, by the pound.
Yep. And then I finally went to the, and that's really where I started most of my sourcing, was at the bins in Oregon, to buy all my inventory. So.
Well, that's kind of neat. So you kind of had it like in your family, and you were indoctrinated into the reselling and thrifting. And Vikki was totally different because her mother was like, "Oh, I don't even want new. I don't want anything used."
Now
you guys kind of both ended up not in the same place, but in similar places. Eventually, I want to get into that, like your little specialties, and maybe you guys can give us some like tips as far as sourcing. And I know, Katy, you do mainly vintage men's clothes, correct?
Yes.
And then now, Katy, it seems like you do, and Katy Vikki, you seem like you do a little bit of everything.
I do. I don't really have a specialty. Like I said briefly, I started out selling antiques and collectibles. I kind of became an antiques dealer, so to speak, when I lived in New England. And it was all self-taught. But when I moved out here about 6.5 years ago, I realized that there is a huge shortage of antiques and collectibles in Nevada. It's a very small state, very new and young state compared to anything in New England.
I guess it's more of a transient kind of community.
Yeah, and it's transient. That's true. So I realized I had to completely change my selling model, and that was when I started thrifting and started selling clothing. Before that, I hadn't really sold clothing at all.
Well, it's not like you're in Florida where people move to retire and have all these collectible antique things.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
But you also do clothing. Now that's kind of like my bane. I mean, I'm not a big clothing. I mean, I have clothing because that's kind of where everybody starts. They either get involved with books. I got feedback. They either get involved with books or they get involved typically with used clothing. But you're still doing clothing. Now,
yeah, I actually, when I very first started, I mean, I know shoes were the first thing that I sold, but I didn't get into clothes right away. There were a few months there where I was focused more on hard goods.
Okay.
And I think it was after I went to the bins for the first time and I saw how much clothing there was that I was like, oh, I'm going to check this out. And so I slowly kind of organically transitioned into just clothing and then men's clothing because it was just more interesting to me. And I actually way prefer it over hard goods because for me, I like having like a system for how I do things. And so now I pretty much just do t-shirts, sweatshirts, and jackets, sometimes sweaters. But I like that I have like a really clear workflow of how I prep my stuff.
Right, you batch things and right.
Yeah, and when you do hard goods, it's like constantly having to adjust like your lights and
true.
How you take pictures of it, how you prepare it, how you list it.
It's a pain.
But everybody has their thing that they're into, and for me, it's just I enjoy.
Again, I have that down on my notes as far as like, do you have any systems in place as far as because I know Vikki, you were saying you listed 20 items the other day, and I'm going to put my earbuds in, guys. I have a little bit of feedback here.
All right.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I have. My system is organized chaos. That's my system. Katy is a bit more organized than I am as far as the way that she, has her days set up for what she does, her photographing, her prepping, her sourcing, that kind of thing. She's very methodical about it, where I'm kind of like, well, okay, today I guess I'm going to take pictures, or today I'm going to try to list as much as I can.
Which is funny because in general, when it comes to like our spaces, I am much more cluttered, much more disorganized, and Vikki is very, very particular about keeping her spaces clean, keeping on top of the details. And yet when it comes to how we
call it like it is. I'm neat, you're a slob.
Exactly. And yet when it comes to how we approach our work, I like having things very methodical. I'm somewhat rigid in like my routine. Like I have my day that I like to do my pictures, how I prepare my clothes. Everything is very much like, I like it very specific. And she's much more when it comes to that. So it's kind of weird.
So you're structured as far as how you do things, but then Vikki is more structured as far as she doesn't have her cash piles or death piles or.
Well, I don't have any death piles.
Oh, you don't have any death piles? Okay.
I don't have death piles. No, not at all. Because I'm just messy. But no, when it comes to, this is one of the things we kind of joke about.
That was one of the things I was going to ask you. I mean, that's one of my note things. Like, how do you guys get past that? I have stuff everywhere. I got boxes everywhere and death piles everywhere. And
we joke about how terrible it would have been when we got together if one of us was like an awful reseller and the other one like just had it all together. Right. And luckily we have very similar approaches to how we do this business, how we work, and neither one of us can stand having death piles. It gives me anxiety if I have stuff sitting around that's not listed. I want it listed. So I just naturally I source it, and then I want to get it up as soon as possible. So now it's like I have like a system in place where it's like I source, I prep all my stuff, I take pictures, measurements, weights, and I want it all listed within the next week before I go source again. And Vicki's pretty much the same way. Neither one of us have ever, I mean, we're just lucky, I think, that's how our brains work, because it's not like, oh, I'm just so disciplined and you guys need to get your act together. It's just the way I am. I need the balance. If I source too many days in a row, it's like I get sick of it. It's like I need that balance. I want to get it listed.
I'm definitely one of those people that I would love to source every day if I could. And I can absolutely see how people can end up having mountains of death piles, because that's the fun part, right? We all love to shop. But I do try to stay on top of my stuff. I have some things that are probably between 2 and 3 weeks old right now that have not been listed because we traveled so much last month.
Right.
So that's the longest it usually gets for me. I'm just about everything. I think I have every single thing except maybe 20 things photographed at least right now. And then I work through that flow right now. And as a matter of fact, Dana is here doing some photographs for me today, and she's going to be doing some listing, and I'll be doing some listing. So I do have an assistant that works part-time, anywhere from 4 to 10 hours a week, depending on the week. Sometimes she's too busy, or I'm too busy, and she doesn't work at all. So it's nice.
So Jamie says we make a good team, and I agree. You know, even though our businesses are separate, we work well together. And part of I love that our philosophy towards this business is very similar. Because it would probably drive us crazy if the other one was doing something so off that we were like, wished we could make them bend to our will. But I think that's part of why we're successful, is that because we have separate businesses. I don't have any say over how she does stuff. She doesn't have any say over how I do stuff. And we just happen to have the same kind of philosophy. Even though Vicki sells everything, she doesn't sell everything. She sells everything above a certain value. So we both kind of have a similar, like, we'd rather go for the slow dime than the fast nickel. We like to source higher valued stuff. We have our goal is to push our average sale price up. So it's a very similar.
Mine's hovering around $50 right now.
Yeah, mine's a little higher, but I also spend more. I'm willing to pay up a little bit more, but I have to because I'm so narrow in my niche. So
that was one of the things I wanted to get into a little bit with you, Katie. As far as I can't pick up vintage things. Just if I look at a rack, I just can't pick up vintage things. I know it's single stitch, but I was watching one of your sourcing videos recently. You were at Savers, I believe, and you were picking up like sweatshirts, and you're like, "This is a $40 sweatshirt." I looked at it as like a $40 sweatshirt. How is that a $40 sweatshirt? Or this is a $50 sweatshirt, and this was like $5.99. This was like $12.99. Are there any, like, again, for somebody that's new to? I'm vintage. I'm sure I have some clothing that sweatshirts that don't still fit me, that are extra larges that are vintage. I mean, how do you can you just spot them, or from feel?
So when I started 4 years ago, when I first went to the bins and I started buying clothing, and mostly men's clothing, I really didn't know anything about fashion. Like, I knew the stuff that I liked, but for the most part, I didn't know anything about brands, what sold, what didn't. So a lot of it was on instinct. And I do think that there's a good portion of being successful in this business that's based on instinct. Like, it really helps a lot to have that just instinct for what might be good, what might be worth something. And then the other big part of it is just being able to pick things up very quickly. I mean, there's some people, I'm sorry to say this, I like to be super supportive of other sellers, but there are people that I see who have been doing this for years, even decades, 10, 15 years. And they have 2,000 things in their store, and the stuff that they're selling doesn't seem like they're really struggling to get by, because it seems like they never quite have picked up what has value and what doesn't. So it's hard to say, like,
some things can't be taught. Anybody can learn a BOLO list. You can memorize brand names and things like that. You can spend the time.
Ties. You have a list of.
You can spend the time doing the research, or you can take 4 hours to go through a thrift store because you've got to look up every single label. Is that the best way to do this business? No, but it can be done that way. I mean,
Yeah.
there are people that's how they work, and that's
There's
how
nuances to it, though. That's the problem. And so Rick says he calls it the eye for a fever. And yes, there's the eye,
the
but
proverbial eye.
yes.
It's true.
And so there's certain bolos that you can give where you can say, okay, Patagonia, Chinchilla, fleece jackets made in the USA, guaranteed that you're going to be able to sell out for good money. And that's a very specific thing I can tell you. But as far as like a vintage T-shirt, for instance, if it's not a band T-shirt or a sports team,
and there's vintage and there's
so vintage, like you might even be able to learn how to pick out what a vintage T-shirt is based on the stitching, based on the tag, based on anything that goes into like understanding what a vintage T-shirt is. And it might be from the 80s, but the graphic might be terrible. And that's like
I wouldn't know if the graphic was terrible. I mean, unless it was damaged and cracked.
And how do you teach that? That instinct. Like a lot of the T-shirts I pick up aren't ones that I can go do a comp check on because I'm never going to find that same T-shirt. It's just an instinct of like, okay, I think this is a really cool graphic that other people are going to think is cool. It's from the 80s.
It's the same with women's vintage clothing. It's people ask me, well, where do you get that price? I don't know. That's what I think the value I place on it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's how much I think it should sell for, and that's the price that I'm going to put it at, and then it sells.
Yeah.
You really can't use comps for vintage clothing.
Yeah. So a lot of it is just trial and error. It's like, yes, like when I first started, I had that eye, I had the instinct, and I started to see understand the whole idea of streetwear and vintage streetwear. And so then I did start watching YouTube stuff. I didn't really watch other sellers on YouTube because none of them were really doing streetwear. And I didn't want to watch hauls of women's clothing or men's suits. And so there were different streetwear channels that I watched. And so I got to where, now I'm in different Facebook groups that are specifically for vintage streetwear.
Okay. I wasn't aware of that. So there are Facebook groups.
Yeah, there are Facebook groups because there's a lot, mostly guys, mostly younger guys.
Right.
Because
young streetwear kids.
Because right now, vintage streetwear is very, very popular. And so there's groups where people are selling to each other or trading or just showing off the cool stuff that they found. And so I can just hang out as a fly on the wall in one of those groups and I see somebody post a picture of some T-shirts they found, and you can see based on the response of this group, you can see, oh, that's something good. Like that's something I should keep my eye out for.
How do these things sell with I use the global shipping program? Did they sell well overseas as well? The vintage clothing, men's clothing?
Yes. And really, I would say, we tell people to do your own international shipping. You're going to get more sales that way. 20% of my business, I think hers is around the same. 20% of my business is international.
Mine's about 17%.
Quite a bit.
Yeah, and the thing with vintage is that, vintage streetwear is super popular right now, super trendy, but you got to think, like in other countries, they didn't necessarily have as much of this stuff when it originally was popular. So in the 90s. So our thrift stores, you can find it if you're out there digging and go out frequently. You go somewhere like Australia, they're not going to have as much stuff sitting around in thrift stores. And so if those guys want to be cool and trendy, they got to go on eBay and they got to buy it from, us here in the US.
Australia loves vintage clothing, whether it's men's vintage streetwear or women's vintage clothing. I sell it.
In Asian countries too, right? Like
Japan likes it a lot too. Japan and Australia, probably the two most popular, I would say.
Yeah, but I make a ton of money on international sales and I do it all myself.
You sell direct. Okay.
Yep.
Now, what do you use for? Do you just use USPS? Do you use Pirate Ship? What do you when you ship?
Well, Pirate Ship does use USPS. It's just a place to get your labels.
Right.
But yes, we use Pirate Ship because they have a huge discount on first class international, so it's cheaper even than buying it through eBay.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried to learn Pirate Ship, and one of these days I'm gonna have to have somebody come on that's somebody from Pirate Ship or somebody that's really experienced with Pirate Ship, because that's the other thing. I know the international shipping with Pirate Ship. I think Lonnie Garage Flips just recently did a video on that within the last week on international shipping first class through Pirate Ship.
Yep, it's cheaper and
fantastic. We have a couple of videos on it. We've done some.
And you can add insurance.
I'll post them in the description below.
Yeah. We've both been using Pirate Ship for well over a year now, and I can't even tell you how much money I've saved and put in my pocket because my customers pay for the shipping international. And I do free shipping domestic on a lot of my smaller items. So I make more money every time.
Well, and people they love these other newer platforms like Poshmark and Mercari that make shipping so much easier because it just makes it a lot less of a headache. But we like to tell people that if you master the shipping game, if you master that and like you understand how to use different things like cubic shipping and
I was going to match cubic shipping with my next, right?
It gives you a big edge over other sellers. Yeah.
There are only so many sellers that understand cubic shipping and first class international and shipping it themselves. And
that's why that's what we want to speak about it, because I think
it's valuable how to get the best pricing when it's FedEx or whether it's USPS, whether you should do calculated or not.
UPS ground or right.
Right. A lot of people don't know exactly.
I don't know.
All of that stuff, and you're limiting yourself by not learning it. It is complicated. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, it is.
Right.
Shipping is the most complicated aspect of this business.
Absolutely.
Or none.
Well, that and knowing, like what Katie said earlier, knowing, I know Casey does a lot of store reviews, and you might have 1,000 items listed, but of those 1,000 items, maybe 800 are not saleable.
Right.
Yeah.
How do you know if something? I mean, I know if I buy a Sears brand or a Walmart brand, typically it's not saleable. But I mean, how do you know? I mean, how do you?
You don't know until you start, and
right.
That's something I think. I mean, I've bought Walmart brand stuff too, and I started out buying just anything when I was buying clothing. I didn't know what would sell and what wouldn't. And I still make mistakes. We all do.
Right. Well, and it really depends on your model, because like our friend Trish, her model is high volume, and so she's got like 6 or 7 or 8.
She has three listers.
Oh, she's got a few listers working for her. Wow. So she doesn't list her own stuff, and so she doesn't care about it. She sells Walmart brands because she'll go and she'll buy it where she buys it in bulk. No, she buys pallets, like bales of clothing. Okay. So it's like she's paying pennies for, let's say, a Walmart brand, but because of the way
it's for $6 or $7, and she's doing volume.
Right, she's selling it for like $10 plus a little bit of shipping or whatever. Basically, she'll net $5 to $6 on it. That's her profit after everybody's paid, after her listers are paid, after all the fees. Right. But she's selling a large volume.
Right.
So she's
works
selling
for her.
$5 or $6 an item, but a large volume of items. Yeah. Okay.
But doing well with that business model, you have to have people working for you.
Right.
And so, so we tell people what you need to decide first is what you want your business model to be. If you want to do lower price stuff, okay, then figure out how you're going to do high volume, figure out how you're going to hire somebody to help you. Because if you're doing it by yourself, you're just going to be struggling for every single month to source enough of it, to photograph enough of it, to list enough of it, to ship it. Like, you're going to have to hire somebody. And if you want to stick it to being yourself, just doing it yourself like we do, then you have to focus on higher average sale price. So
yeah, that's true, and that's the issue. Like I'm looking with Crystal here. It says Walmart and mall brands sell if the style is on trend. Well, that's the other thing.
I agree with you, Rosie.
What's on trend and what's not on trend.
It's true. Like if it's something that's super fashionable, you can sell it based on the style and the print or the pattern or whatever, no matter what the brand is. That's when you don't advertise the brand. You put the brand in your description, but you don't need to put it in your title.
Yeah. It's just for us, for me, just doing this by myself as a one-off, I'm not going to pick up stuff like that. That's going to be such a small margin. It's not worth my time with the way I operate, because I'm not somebody, you see some people who are like, I listed 30 items. I listed 40 items today. And they're just like busting through these listings. I'm like, I hustle, but I don't like that kind of hustle. That's not the kind of hustle for me. I like to be excited about the pieces that I'm selling. For me, that's a requirement. So when I source stuff, and even a year ago, I was sourcing lower valued items than I am today. I'm so much more picky about what I pick up. I want to be excited about it because then it makes it fun to photograph and it makes it fun to list it.
Is there some kind of, again, you do men's vintage clothing. Is there something that somebody that's new to vintage clothing, men's clothing? I mean, obviously, like I said, I've owned them in the past because I'm vintage. But
yeah,
how would I go about if I'm sourcing at a thrift shop? Is there any kind of tips or recommendations as far as, I mean, the learning other than going into Facebook groups?
I mean, I really do think when it comes to vintage, like vintage streetwear and like t-shirts and stuff like that, honestly, going into Facebook groups, going in, like watching videos. So for instance, there's one channel that I really like, Round 2 the show. But there's lots of, and that has like a huge following, and it's like basically these physical stores where it's almost like ridiculously upscale Buffalo Exchange, because it's
I'm just saying, I was going to bring up too. You
about
source the Buffalo Exchange as well, which is
and
right.
Watching those videos, like you're really going to get an understanding of what people are excited about, what they like. Instagram is a great source, because Instagram, there's like a million different accounts out there, but you find the ones that have 15, 20, 30, 50, 100,000 followers that are really popular. And you're going to see, in fact, I'd say Instagram is probably the number one place to go, because Instagram is all photo driven, and you can see,
absorb a lot of information quickly.
And you can see based on the response they get, like, some of these accounts, they put up a picture of a t-shirt, and if they've got crazy amount of comments of people saying that's awesome, I love it, blah, 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 you can see right in real time how people are responding to different styles and what's getting the big responses.
Yeah, I think the best way to do it is hands-on. Like you say, is there one specific tip? When Katie's got the right message when you're looking for vintage clothing. I think the best, people that are watching this, they watch YouTube clearly. So, follow, somebody like Round Two, or follow Paul Cantu, or follow, I hate to say it, but even that Slobby's World show, that has a lot of good tidbits in it. So there are a lot of shows for vintage clothing for men, and vintage streetwear specifically, but for vintage clothing for women, or high-end clothing for women, and you say that you don't know clothing necessarily.
Right.
What I tell people is go in and just literally hands-on feel the garments, feel them, touch the items. I know it sounds creepy, but you want to go and put your hands on the fabrics. When you can tell the difference between a cheap shirt from Walmart or JCPenney and something that was sold at Nordstrom or Lord & Taylor, you can tell the difference between brands, because good expensive materials, they command a higher price, and you're going to feel the difference in the way that it feels. It's going to be better made. It's going to be heavier, thicker, better structure, no matter what the item is.
Yeah.
So part of it is just getting tactile. If it's something that's, you're talking polyester, nylon, rayon, for the most part, those are very cheap materials, and you're not going to find them used a lot in higher end clothing. Now, there's exceptions to everything, but the majority, you're going to find better quality materials in higher end clothing.
Yeah. I can go through a rack of t-shirts super fast, and I can pull out the vintage stuff. I could take a vintage t-shirt that's blank, has nothing on it, and a tag is missing, and I could tell you if it's vintage and probably the decade it's from as well. But that's just from time. That's just for me buying and selling and getting a better idea. And I can identify the tags, and I know I can see a Hanes tag and know if it's from the 80s or the 90s or the 70s. Same with all the other tags. But it's just stuff that is from over time picking stuff up. And I know that, if it's not your thing, or if you haven't done it before, I see people who will show a picture of like a shirt that to me is very obviously a reprint. And they're like, they think they found this amazing vintage t-shirt. And that's not because they're not smart.
How do I tell? Other than single or double stitching, how do I tell it's a reprint?
Right. And that's not, and even the single double stitch thing is not a hard and fast rule.
Oh, right. Okay.
So,
and I used to do what Kimmy says. She'd write down brands on a note card and put it in her wallet when she was learning. I did that for a while too. And one of the other things, like Rosie said, the Crystal Rosie's Closet said, and Katie said, I think following people on Instagram is incredibly instrumental in my learning and my continued education and my continued learning as far as trends and brands and things to look for. Who I follow on Instagram? I follow a lot of the young, successful Poshmark sellers. Okay. I'm not a Poshmark seller, and for a couple of reasons. I don't care for all of that social sharing. That's more time than I have to dedicate to it, and I also think that they generally underprice a lot of things. So for me, that's not a platform I'm interested in. I may change my mind, but right now I'm not interested in it. But a lot of the younger sellers that are on point, that are very fashion conscious, that are successful sellers on Poshmark, that have good, strong Instagram followings, I follow them because they teach me. I learn brands, I learn styles, I learn all kinds of things that are on trend right now. I'm all about the vintage stuff. I can pick that up from across the room. But current brands and current styles, I am an old bag. Okay. It takes a lot more time for me to figure out what's trendy. So I get it from Instagram. I know what's fashionable. And it's because I follow trendsetters. And that's how I learn.
So I see in the chat, Elizabeth asked, do you think that that vintage clothing is a temporary trend? Yes and no. I think that
I think it's always been on
vintage
trend.
has always been on trend. The decades that are more popular, the time periods that are more popular is always shifting and recycling. I do think that
like right now, 90s is very on trend. 90s grunge, flannel, plaid, that type of thing is very on trend. Where 5 years ago it was more 80s neons, brights. You know, the whole big Tommy Hilfiger, Tommy for your mommy thing.
Well, the Tommy, that's 90s, but that's starting to fade. So it all cycles, but there's certain things, like for instance, I sell a lot of vintage sports stuff, so t-shirts and jackets and stuff like that. And let me tell you, sports fans and people who collect sports stuff, you know, that stuff's always going to have value. Maybe certain time periods are going to be more valuable at certain times, but they're never going to lose their value overall. You know, finding a really cool, whatever your team is, you know, 49ers t-shirt from the 70s, somebody who collects for, you know, the 49ers stuff is going to still want that no matter what is popular at the time. But yes, it ebbs and flows, but I don't think it ever goes away completely. I mean, I've been into like t-shirts and stuff like that since I was a kid, and like goofy t-shirts and like interest in like the whole vintage, and like, you know, when I lived in Portland years ago, you know, all the t-shirts that are really popular everywhere right now that are selling really well are the t-shirts that I would see like the hipsters and stuff like that wear all the time in like the early 2000s, and they were super popular, and shopping at Buffalo Exchange was super popular back then.
Were they called hipsters in the 2000s?
Yeah, we called them hipsters.
Yeah, I think,
that whole like
I know that.
wearing this old
that I do know that a little bit.
Yeah, but wearing this old vintage t-shirt with a slogan on it from the 70s was popular 20 years ago.
Right.
So you know, it's always going to go up and down. What's going to demand top dollar, but it'll come back and it goes away and it changes, and you know, it is what it is.
There was a question about the round two. I posted in the banner there. Do you see the question? What is round two, or did I hear it incorrectly?
Yeah, so round two is a store. So there's this guy, Sean Witherspoon, who is from, I think he's from like West Virginia or so. I don't know. I don't remember where he's from, but he had originally, Richmond, Virginia. I think he's from Richmond, Virginia. Anyway, he's just a guy who was really into streetwear, and I think he's around my age. And several years back, he opened this really cool, kind of like a mom and pop level Buffalo Exchange, but it was for vintage streetwear. So it was this little thrift shop, and he would buy people's stuff and then sell it there and everything. And it's just grown from there and become this huge phenomenon. So if you go, so the name of this original store was Round Two, because it's like round two, bringing the stuff back. Right. And then he expanded, and he has so many stores. Even since I started following them a couple of years ago, they've expanded to like, you know, LA and New York, and I think they're in Florida. And so they're all over the place. They're huge, and they do a lot of stuff with current streetwear as well. Their Instagram for at least the Round Two vintage stuff, that's the only one I follow, is really great. But they, for like the last 4 years, I think, they've had this guy videoing them. So it's like these 45-minute long episodes following their stores and what they're doing, and people coming in and selling. So you get to see the trends firsthand, like what they're paying out big money for. Like the Yeezy shoes would come out from Adidas, and people would literally go to Adidas, buy, you know, stand in line for hours, buy the shoes for $300, go immediately to Round Two, sell them for $500, and then Round Two would sell them for $750. And that's how they would get their stuff. But
crazy.
If you want to watch, I think Sean Witherspoon from Round Two probably has single-handedly had a huge contribution to what has happened today with the popularity of vintage streetwear and like the whole Slobby Robbie. I think they're friends and everything, because it's basically what Slobby Robbie had in Tucson with his store. It was just like a little mini Round Two, and then he took it to Netflix. So.
Now, Vikki, you said you don't do Poshmark. You do. I know you have a sponsor. List Perfectly is one of your sponsors. Katy, do you cross post on other platforms?
I just do eBay and Etsy. Those are my two.
eBay and Etsy, and what do you do, Vikki?
I do eBay, Etsy, and a little bit of Mercari. I just got started on Mercari about 2 months ago. So
and you can use List Perfectly to cross post.
Yes. I use List Perfectly to cross post to the other platforms. Over 1,000 items on Etsy. I put only my vintage items on Etsy, and I have a total of 2,500 and change in my store. I'm kind of like
2,500 items.
2,500 items. Yeah.
Oof, okay.
Yeah, I've got like 2,200 items on eBay, and I just hit the 1,300 mark on Etsy. So
I see Crystal.
Did you have 33,000 plus, or is that with the cross posting?
No. I have everything that's in my Etsy store is also in my eBay store. So I have about 2,200 listings total.
So you guys have almost 5,000 items total between the two of you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
Holy cow.
And
You
sales-wise,
have issues when you try to find something you can't find.
well, we know where everything is. We're both very
We know where
organized.
everything is.
We're both very organized. Between the two of us, our sales are very similar too. I think
She makes more than I do.
I think we're going to exceed. If you were to combine our two stores, we're going to do over 250,000 this year.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Gross.
Gross.
Right.
Yeah. And that's just eBay.
Got to pay the government.
Yeah. Yeah. She's able to do better than me because she is not so, because I have a niche. It's like it helps me in a lot of ways, but it also makes it harder in a lot of ways as well, because I'm so narrow in what I sell.
Right.
And she has a much wider variety, and a lot of her stuff, it's not going to be that often that I'm going to find a t-shirt or a sweatshirt or a jacket that I'm buying that's going to sell for hundreds of dollars.
Right.
Maybe if I find a really cool t-shirt, I'll sell it for $150, $200 or a jacket. But because of what Vikki buys, it's much more likely that she's going to come across something like, let's say, a knitting machine that she pays $30 for, or $50 for at a garage sale, and then turns around and sells it for $750. That doesn't happen with what I sell for the most part, or what I buy, source for the most part. So so she's kind of killing me. She's leaving me in her dust.
Well, let's touch quickly on the two things, and then we'll just roll into the couple current events. We're pushing an hour here. I know would value your time. Vikki, you said that was not when you mentioned earlier about your flip to the $1,500, $2. Would you recall what your biggest flip was?
Well, let's see. I've sold a few cars and motorcycles in my time.
Oh, okay.
Those were usually on consignment.
They were local sale. Okay.
It's kind of cheating.
So I
that's not really
classic cars for like $30,000 and then
$30,000.
But she did not find them in a thrift store for $5.
Right.
True.
So they were on consignment, and I kept a set commission, so I wouldn't say that. But I would say there are two that the cash register is definitely one of my big ones.
Sure.
But another two that I've sold. Let's see. I picked up a box of antique and vintage photographs at an auction back in New England. This one was more than 10 years ago. I think I paid $20 for the assorted photographs, the old cardstock and tintype photographs. And it was a big mixture. I sold the majority of those photographs for like $5,000 over. They were all listed within a week, and they were all in auction.
Within a week. Wow.
There was one specific photograph that sold for over $1,500 to Russia.
Crazy.
And so I think I probably had it's about the same. Maybe I had $1 into it, if that.
$1, $2 on the $1,500, right?
And my buyer sent me U.S. cash in a FedEx envelope. I could pay for it. Sent me cash.
Insane.
In a FedEx guaranteed overnight. I think it took 2 days. And I shipped it off to him, and I had to ask him why. They went to this crazy bidding war at the end. There were two people vying for it, and it was an auction. I had to ask them, why was this? I started at like $20. I had no idea it had any value. It was one of those crazy things. And it was a photograph of a Russian czar, and he happened to be wearing a specific medallion. The photograph was because of the medallion.
Oh, okay.
It was the Saint Stanislaus something. I couldn't tell you exactly what it was,
yeah.
But that was the significance.
That.
And apparently that medallion is missing, or there was one of the only photographs of it in existence. I had no idea. Anyway, it was super valuable.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I sold was I sold a doll. It's an ideal Johnny Play Pal doll. If anyone were to look that up, it's a very rare doll. It's about 36 inches. It was in a big box of dolls. I couldn't identify what it was. I just threw it up as a vintage doll, and he sold for like $1,800. Crazy. It was like 10 years ago.
I don't have anything I've sold for that much.
Well, I was going to ask you next. So
nothing I've sold for that much. But Greg, DePage Picker in the chat, he says that I kill it with the vintage, like special event T-shirts. And it's funny because probably my favorite find One of the things I love, our bins here in Vegas are terrible because it's all the kind of leftover stuff that didn't sell at the Goodwills. But the ones in Oregon, and I know other parts of the country it works this way as well. In Oregon, all the outlets are also direct donation sites.
Direct donation plus the excess.
Half of the stuff is from the stores, and the other half just got dropped off.
Right.
So there's actually a chance that you're going to find some amazing like vintage Pendleton or stuff that's actually worth. Like I found like a brand new. It was a vintage Filson hunting jacket. So that's probably the things I found at the bins in Oregon were nuts. So that right there was a really good one. But my most favorite finds there was it was a Steve Prefontaine. Any of you guys who know anything about running and like the Nike brand, Steve Prefontaine. It was a 1983 Steve Prefontaine Memorial Run T-shirt, and it was a Nike branded T-shirt because Steve Prefontaine, his coach was Phil Knight of Phil Knight, is that right? Phil Knight of Nike. Right. Anyway, so it was a 1983 Nike T-shirt with Steve Prefontaine. And I seriously picked it up. I must have like looked and sounded like a maniac because I was like giggling to myself audibly because I was so excited that I found this T-shirt. And so those vintage T-shirts are what, maybe 6 ounces, 5-6 ounces, because they're really light, those like 80s T-shirts. So I paid less than 50 cents for this T-shirt, and I sold it for like $275. It was such a cool T-shirt, and that kind of stuff gets me riled up. I think it's fun. I think it's really fun.
Okay, so that covers that. Why don't we just touch on a couple current events real quickly, and then we'll just open it up. There are any additional questions, guys? Any questions, please put it in the chat and put question marks in front of it and after it, so it'll make it easier for us to pick it up. 2 things quickly. I know you guys did an extensive video on the eBay glitch with the item specifics. Any further updates for us on that?
No, I mean, we did a couple videos and we had our show today. We touched on it a little bit.
I know you did mention it, right?
Yeah, I mean, the latest thing that eBay has said is that, you don't have to do anything with your current listings, but if you revise or list new stuff, you need to fill in those item specifics. They, the size required item specific is still missing on a lot of listings, but they've done temporary fix so it'll still show up in the search now, so that's fine. And supposedly they're working on the next couple weeks, fixing that and filling in those missing item specifics. We're kind of both of the mind that we're not going to wait around for stuff to get fixed for us. We're going to go ahead and do it ourselves anyway. And we did a little demo in our last show, which was just earlier today, of how you can relatively quickly go through one by one and fix your listings.
I had to do mine manually, and I don't have a lot of listings. I mean, that's good and bad. That I don't have a lot of listings is bad, but that I didn't have a lot of listings.
I hear you. There's some people who have like there's a guy in our group.
You get 1,000 listings, you had to manually edit 1,000 pieces of clothing.
So it's nuts.
I mean, we're going through one at a time and doing ours. There's no way to bulk edit.
Right. I couldn't figure out a way, and I don't know if anyone has come up with an idea.
I don't think there is one, and it's not just size, and it's not just clothing. It's several categories.
There's 4 or 5 different item specifics I had to add.
Yeah. So we're doing it all one at a time. I got about 300 done out of 2,500 so far.
Yeah.
So
I'll get mine done within this next week. I just feel like, there's been issues before where eBay said they were working on a fix, like going back to the pictures last summer, and then it turned out that they weren't able to fix it. So I just don't want to wait any longer. And, if there's any possibility that at some point in the future, they've said next year, there will come a point where they will be requiring all that stuff to be fixed. And so I just don't want to put it off. I want to go ahead and get it fixed now, so I don't have to think about it. So I'm going through, and I'm not going through and adding all of the new ones that they have. I'm only making sure that all the required ones have everything in them.
Exactly.
And so I'm doing it very quickly. And at some point in the future, when I want to end old listings and do sell similar, I will go and I'll actually do a more thorough completion of those item specifics. But right now they still have like all the additional crap in there because everything got merged together accidentally for some reason. So that still hasn't been fixed. So it's like, it just takes forever to slog through it all.
Right.
Crystal says that's absolutely true. That's why I'm going in and doing everyone individually. And also I am adding in all the other required specifics as I'm going through. I'm not doing the suggested unless I think it's extremely pertinent, but I'm doing everything else that's required.
On my new listings I'm being very thorough and going through, and I'm adding whatever additional specifics I think are useful. It's just on fixing the ones that are currently up. I'm just doing as fast as I can, just the required. That's it.
Right. So they'll show up in search. I mean, they'll have a size. I mean, that's crazy. And the other issue was the managed payments, how they're transitioning people, and some people actually were transitioned to the managed payments in October. And the glitch with the managed payments. You guys familiar with the issues they're having with that?
We are familiar with it, but neither one of us use managed payments, so it hasn't affected
right.
us.
But we have a couple of friends who, we knew firsthand from them, I guess secondhand from them, that they were like a week behind. It was like 3, 4, 5 payouts that they still hadn't got. And it was like, getting to, one of our friends is like eating frozen burritos for lunch every day because she couldn't afford to like buy anything to eat. I mean, that's pretty sad. Because
people rely on their income. That's unacceptable.
Yeah. And so I don't know if it has anything. I mean, it's really interesting that like kind of 3 major issues have come up on the site all at the same time between item specifics, managed payments, and also Seller Hub and your performance chart being completely screwed up, which is still screwed up. So I don't know. It's frustrating. I'll say that.
Well, you would have thought, again, I'm not a techie guy, but you would have thought they would have had some kind of patch. I mean, you have to anticipate that. They didn't do any kind of test or
beta testing, and they've said times that they tried to dial it back and say they do beta test, but they weren't able to test everything before the rollout. Well, that's a bullshit excuse as far as I'm concerned.
If it affected everyone that sold clothing, how could it not show up?
Well, and the whole like merging of basically it's like every single new item specific that they came up with all merged together. So it's asking you for shoe width on a t-shirt listing. And, when you look at the sizes, there's literally like 150 size options going from 0, 0, 65
to every
XL,
European size,
2X, like men's sizes, women's sizes, kids sizes. It's all together. Everything is blended together. And I'm like, how does that even happen? And why hasn't it been fixed yet? And, if you open up, because it has your required item specifics, it has additional, and it has like and then you can click to even more. And when you expand that out, it's like you're scrolling to get through it all. There's so much of it there. Mm-hmm. It's just crazy. And like department, okay, I'm listing something in the men's clothing category, men's t-shirts. Why is there a section for department that drops down to men, women, children? Like it's so there's no reason for it to even
be a lot of redundancy.
Yeah. So
true. Okay, so we covered that, and I guess that's basically. Why don't you guys, and again in the chat, guys, if there are any additional questions, just we're going to close things down now. Just bring up in the chat, and want you to just discuss your people that aren't familiar with your show, your YouTube, your different shows, your Boss Up and List, and your Sunday where you show what you thrifted and show your profits, etc. Why don't you just go over that a little bit for people that aren't familiar with your YouTube channel?
Yeah, so we mostly do live shows. We know we should do more pre-recorded stuff, but the reality is, Adam, it takes a lot more time to do pre-recorded and to upload it.
Pre-recorded, and I'm not skilled enough to do it.
During the week where you sit down and do a live show, it makes it a lot easier, so we can focus on our business.
We don't have any more time.
Yeah, so
I can't put out 5 edited YouTube shows a week. I'm sorry, I can't do it.
It's only 168 hours in the week, and we all have the same amount of time.
I can't do it. She's always like, why don't we do more of this? And I'm like, you want to do it? Good luck. But yeah, so we have a couple of set shows that we do every week. We have the Sunday Live Haul, which I think is probably mostly our most popular show. And I think
very educational, like you said. I mean, I could watch that to learn about the men's vintage t-shirts and
and I think it's popular for a few reasons. First of all, at the beginning of every show, the first thing we do is we show our real numbers. Like you're
very
transparent. So we show exactly what our gross sales are on the different platforms we're on. We break down our costs, like our cost of goods, our shipping, our fees, and everything, so we can show people. Because you ever see people like post in Facebook groups? They're like, "Look what I'm shipping out this week," and it's like,
don't you love that? They have like 50 packages. It's like
or look at my
our DVD.
Look at my 60-day total. I did $80,000. And I'm like, listen, I think it's great that they're successful or doing well. It's awesome. But it's frustrating to me when they don't disclose their cost of goods. Everything else you can figure out what probably the cost of goods,
right.
But if they're not telling you how much they're paying for it, then they're telling you nothing. So we like to be super transparent about that, because we want people, if they're going to listen to us as some sort of guidance of how to be better resellers, we want to at least show them some evidence that we kind of know what we're talking about. And so we do that, and then we show just the highlights of the things that we sell, do throughout the week, and then we show our haul, like stuff that we've gotten. So we try to just be really super transparent about it. And then we have our Wednesday show.
Our Wednesday show is our Boss Up and List show. So the Facebook group that we help co-lead and moderate is called the Boss Facebook group, Business of Online Selling Success. So our Wednesday show is the Boss Up and List show, and that's just basically our more businessy show where we talk about things that are happening on the platform, or changes or questions, or we discuss shipping options and supplies and all that kind of stuff to help people with resellers. We also try to do every couple of months, we do a live story view. Some people do want story views. I've been asked to do them several times. And I don't want to charge to do story reviews. God loves Casey. God love Casey. But if I were doing a story review, I'd be charging you $150, not $10. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, I get that
it takes a long time.
I mean, Casey's whole thing is that by doing a $10 store review, he's hoping that he can get these people started, and then he wants to bring them on as clients to help teach them more. So it makes sense from a marketing standpoint, and plus he's helping people, but we just don't have time for it.
Yeah,
he puts a lot of time into teaching people.
So
that's true. And then Casey again, and he has videos on this. He's selling digital information. So he's marketing his services. And I don't know how he finds the time personally. I tell people
I don't either.
He sleeps like 4 hours a night.
Which I will say his services for anybody who
they're very reasonable.
That kind of stuff. I do think that he's ridiculously affordable.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I agree.
We also have our No Pants Friday After Dark show. That's one that it doesn't happen every week. It's probably once a month to once every month and a half at this point. And we've only had we've had 2 episodes, and our third one is actually this Friday. And that's more that's just a fun show. It's not, it's resellers, but we usually are asking silly questions and just having fun. We're having Greg DuPage Picker. He's going to actually be on our show. So he'll be on Friday night. So that should be fun.
Oh, joining us Friday night. There were 2 quick questions. There was a question from Beverly Vikki. Any opinion on advice for selling on a Macquarie?
I'm so brand new to Macquarie. I would hate to try to speak as though I'm an expert. I've literally been on the platform for about 2 months. I've had 7 sales. They've all gone very smoothly. I'm actually cross-posting just my hard goods there because their shipping is so good and it's so easy to cross-post. So I don't want to say I'm any sort of an expert by any means. It's brand new for me too. So my only advice is if you're interested in try it. It's a very easy platform to use.
Well, what I would say, doesn't really matter what platform. What I would say is you want to be on more than one platform, but you need to be selective and pick the platforms that work for you, and then commit to them. Don't be on 10 different platforms, giving one half an hour here, another one an hour there, and you barely are able to give any attention to any of them. You need to pick the platforms that are going to work the best for you. I sell a lot of vintage men's streetwear. Etsy is a great platform for that. So that's one of the other ones that I focus on. But whatever it is, you have to be committed to it and actually put the time into it.
Okay, and this was just more of a personal thing from Jameson's Closet. I guess he's going to be in Vegas. I guess he wants to get the other dude and go thrifting at his Savers. So I'm sure they can message you.
You're only going to be there for one day tomorrow. Tomorrow, if you're only going to go to one Savers, I suggest going to the one on Tropicana. That's the biggest one, and they actually have a bins sort of section for their clearance stuff. It's by the pound. It's not dirty. So it's not a lot in there, but it's not dirty. So I would definitely, if you're only going to go to one, go to that one.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to show one thing real quickly to you guys. I mean, I don't know if I'm sure Katy and Vikki may have seen this. We'll just show this real fast. Where is it? Can you see that?
Oh yeah.
Oh, that didn't make it any larger. There we go.
Hey!
Someone familiar?
Yeah, that's our live show that we did from eBay Open. We had
there's Casey.
One of our friends had rented this gorgeous suite that we did our live show there. We had over 100 people up in that suite.
It was awesome.
It was so much fun.
Including myself.
We had a lot of fun.
We honestly weren't expecting that many people to show up because where it was located, it was quite a hike, and I'm sure
Adam can attest to the hike.
It was quite a hike.
Oh my word.
It was in the same hotel, so the same casino. So we were pleasantly surprised by how many people ended up there. So it was pretty cool.
Let me do that, and we're back. Okay, guys, so that's it. I guess there were no additional questions. I want to thank Katy and Vikki again, guys. Very educational, and appreciate you taking the time and joining this little YouTuber and trying to educate us. And you've always been very kind to me. And
yeah, thanks for having us. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it quite a bit.
Always fun to talk to other resellers and get to know people.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like you said, I mean, I do it to help educate people, and it helps me connect with the reselling community. Again, real quick, guys, if you're not subscribed, if you came over from Katy and Vikki, again, I have a lot of interviews with other resellers. If you would please subscribe, and hit the
hit the thumbs up button on this show. Show Adam some love. Thank
you. And I could use the subscribers and the watch hours. So I'm trying to get to that magical 4,000 hours.
I hear you.
Okay. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. And moderators, thank you for moderating the chat. And I appreciate you being here. And we shall see you the next time.
All right.
Thanks again.
Bye. Thanks.